All right, EntreArchitect community, it's 4 p.m. Eastern, which means it's time for the EntreArchitect Context and Clarity live conversation for Thursday, October 13th. Got my calendar set on the wrong day. I just realized that. It's October 13th and it's Thursday. Welcome back. Glad you're here. As you get here, let us know that you are here and let us know where here is for you. Where are you joining this conversation from? If we've never met before, my name is Jeff. I come here every weekday afternoon at 4 p.m. Eastern for one reason, so that we can find clarity around the things that matter most to you, the architect. It doesn't matter if you're the employee of a firm or you own your own firm. Maybe you've circled a date on the calendar. You said 2022 is my year. You've got almost a quarter left, and you're on the runway to starting your own thing. Or maybe you have owned your own firm for 9 months or 9 years or 19 years. You're starting to rethink or reimagine what that firm could or maybe even should be. All of the topics that we cover, one topic every day, they all fall under the broad umbrella of the business of architecture. And they're all the need to know topics for the success of entrepreneur architects just like you. As always, for these Context and Clarity live conversations, I am joined by my co-host, Katharine MacPhail. Hi, Katharine.
Hello, Jeff. Almost always, because I'm not going to be here next week for people who tune in, especially for me. I won't be here. So
there's an exception to every rule, and that exception is next week.
Almost. Yeah, next week. Yep.
Almost. The vast majority of these weeks, I'm joined by Katharine. Always a pleasure to have you here. You have a scarf-ish on today.
Yeah, it's fall, and there's going to be some thunder. So even though it's 70 degrees, I am still dressing for fall weather. Just have to be like that. Oh, can you hear me, Jeff? One moment, please. We're having technical difficulties. Emily, can you hear me? Maybe it's me. The gremlins are back. Yes, Mark is right. You can hear me, Emily. That's what you're saying. Jeff just dropped the audio suddenly. Okay, well, he's gone now. He's back. Just to give you a moment by moment recap. And I can also hear you. That's nice.
Excellent. I saw right before, so I had to hit refresh. I don't know, but right before I did that, I saw Mark's comment where he says the gremlins are back, and I think that's fair. We're in the movie Gremlins at this point, so we'll do our best.
Sometimes.
Yep, it does. We'll do our best. Right before I hit refresh, I was going to say we started with a woot. I saw John Jones had joined us from Connecticut, and with a woot, and that means that he was the first in the room, which means that he was celebrating the fact that he's the winner of today's John Kinney Memorial Crocheted Bathtub Award. It's a coveted award. It's a hard-fought award. So congratulations on that, John. I see Daryl in Rochester, New York. Welcome. And Mark LePage, of course. And Audrey, welcome back. She says, good morning. Audrey joins us from the future over in Australia. So thanks for joining us today, Audrey. I lost many of the comments when I hit refresh, so apologies to those of you that I am missing. If you are on Facebook right now, if you're listening to this on Facebook and you're typing away in the comments, and for some reason your comment isn't showing up on the screen like Audrey's is or John Jones is, it's because you're in a private Facebook group and there are these things called rules, privacy policies that, of course, we don't have a choice. We have to adhere to. Facebook won't let your name, your likeness, your comment out unless you give it permission to talk to Restream. So,
or unless they're subpoenaed.
And well, that maybe, maybe it's one of those days. One thing to try is to go to the URL in the bottom left hand of the screen right now. Open up a different tab because you're going to need to type this into your browser window. Chat.restream.io/FB. So chat.restream.io/FB as in Facebook. And then a couple of clicks later, you will give Facebook permission to communicate with Restream, which is this platform where the gremlins are today. Also, if you've done this before, the permissions run out at some point. So you may just need to re-up those permissions. So chat.restream.io/FB is the place to solve all of your problems. I mean, all of your problems with just a couple of clicks. So check that out.
Such promises.
Yeah. The disclaimer comes at the end of the broadcaster. So check that out. I see Rod. Rod says the Facebook abusers in the chat. Welcome back, Mr. Facebook abuser. Glad that you've joined us from Monroe, Louisiana today. Glad to have you here. All right. Other than losing audio and all of those things, what are we missing at this point?
I think that's it.
Okay.
I think we're ready to go.
All right. Well, as long as we can keep the audio working and hopefully the video works as well, we're going to move forward. I see Steve. Hi, Steve from Des Moines, Iowa. Glad you're joining us today as well. It's great to have some new faces and so many. I saw right before I hit refresh, there was somebody had joined us from YouTube as well. So we're covering a lot of platforms today. I haven't seen Kurt from Twitch yet. He heads up our big fan base, our huge fan base over there on Twitch. So maybe he'll pop in at this point and we'll get just about every platform covered here. But it's great to have all of you with us today. Let me do this. Let me introduce our guest who is munching on those green peanut M&Ms back in the green room. We're freshly stocked, freshly back from Costco with a giant bag of just peanut M&Ms. Our guest today is a translator of emotions whose work is soulful, cliche-free, and mission-driven.
Cliche-free.
Cliche-free.
I mean, interrupt. That's wow.
So touche. She's a brand strategist and the co-author of the book Rooting Up, Essays on Modern Branding, and also one of the speakers, I might add, of the upcoming EntreArchitect Community Annual Meeting. You have, 3 weeks from today will be the closing day of the EntreArchitect Annual Meeting. If you don't know about that, go over to open another tab so you can do this later. Go over to smallfirmconference.com and you can learn about all the speakers, the venue, the program, and register there as well. You can join us in Austin, Texas, November 1st through 3rd. Our guest today, as I said, will be one of the speakers at the conference. She's a co-founder and the CEO of the brand strategy firm Root and River. Emily Soccorsy, welcome to Context and Clarity Live. Where are we? Completely, I don't know.
Hello, thanks for the M&Ms, although I prefer plain or the dark chocolate mint ones. Those are
all right. Chocolate mint ones, seriously?
Yeah, they have the seasonal ones that come out. And then
Is it how minty is it? Are they?
It's like, it's just like a chocolate mint candy. They're pretty minty. I like it, chocolate mint.
I'll have to try that this season.
Yeah, keep an eye out. They'll pop up soon.
Compare it to an Andes candy.
Yeah, yes. I was thinking the same thing, Jeff.
It's about in that direction, yeah.
All right.
But dark chocolate.
Oh, okay. Now I'm on board.
Much.
All right, we're gonna since it's seasonal, we'll start providing those in the green room.
And I'm sure a lot of them are green if it is seasonal.
They are.
So
white and red, I think, yeah.
So we only have to pick two colors out.
Yeah, I'll take the red ones.
We spend a lot of time picking all the other colors
most
out.
Of our
so
time.
We have the green. Yeah, that's what we do most of the time. So
that's the level of detail that we really go to.
That's part of our brand. What can I say? That's worth the time.
It's good. It's good to have a brand.
Yeah.
So Emily, since you're somewhat familiar with brands, what is a brand?
So our definition of brand is how other people experience what you believe. So, it's really easy to think of a brand as like a persona, like a Kardashian, like the personal brand that is often what pops to mind. But as with everything at Root and River, we like to take it deep. So that definition sort of combines two things, experience and beliefs. And that's really at the heart of what a brand is.
I like that particularly because, it's, as you know, we kind of stack up our entire week focused on what we're going to talk about today or what we anticipate talking about today. And so we've asked questions like what makes you different and why does your work matter and what are your biggest needs and things like that. And I like that idea that you're talking about because I think it speaks in a couple of different directions, right? At the experience part, what is it like to work with you, which I think is incredibly important. My opinion is it's incredibly important in professional services and architecture firms and branding firms as well. As what is it like to work with this particular architect? Because the referrals and the repeat clients and referrals is such a big thing. When we think about those things that you're talking about in that deep definition that you're talking about, then how do we go deeper? How do these experiences come about? Where do they come from? And how do we establish that as a brand?
Yeah. I think that again, philosophically, as with everything, it begins with an inward journey to really uncover what we believe and pull it all the way through the client
Mhm.
experience, which I think as business owners or as people who are really I'll say as a creative field, I consider myself creative as well. You're very consumed, right, by what's in front of you. But it's branding, the act of branding, the process of branding begins with sort of a pull the car over moment and this deep dive. And instead of fixating on, one part of it, it's like taking a look into what we call the soil of soul to determine what is it that I really truly believe that's powering me every day as a human being, and then how is that showing up in the work that I'm doing, the work that we as a team are doing, naming those things and getting kind of consensus around them, and then pulling that through to say, okay, now how is that showing up in the client experience, or how is that showing up in the process that I've created? And so it's very rare that we take a step back to actually get intentional about what's there and then start to pull it through. A lot of times we just start on the other end. Like, oh, I want my clients to feel this way. And so we're like, okay, how can we create that feeling? But it's so much more effective and sustainable when you begin with the foundation work. And no, I consistently want to make people feel, I want to be a reflection of my deep belief in beauty, right? I want everything to do to reflect that. And that's one of my core beliefs. So how can I infuse beauty into everything that we do, that we touch? Yeah.
What role, if any, do our clients play in the development or the shaping of the brand?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think when we begin, you may begin with an idea of what you believe, or you might not even pause to do that. You're just getting into the work, right? But at some point, and I'm sure I'd love to see people in chat chime in if this has happened to you, where you're suddenly in the middle of a project working with a client and you're miserable and you hate this, you kind of just hate this whole experience. There's not a lot of viscosity in the relationship, and you start to ask yourself, where did I go wrong? Why did I accept this? But what was the process that got me to here? And I think that's typically a moment when people kind of, the brand light bulb goes off in their minds of like, how do I make it so clear of who I am and how I want to work that I never have people come into my ecosystem, so to speak, that become a drain of my time, resources, and energy. And that's really, so clients can teach us like what we don't want, but that also really helps to clarify, what we are about and the places that we are really strong and what we're good at. So clients can also give us wonderful feedback saying, you know what, we did this project together, but the part I liked the most, that I got the I thought you were fantastic at, or I just enjoyed the most was this. And then we start to learn, oh, maybe I could organize a little bit more around that, or I can infuse more time or some spaciousness or some ritual around that moment. And so we can also use our clients, not use our clients, but go to our clients to find out if the brand is really holding true, that what we intend is that really being conveyed, and having open conversations about, hey, did you feel this coming through? Or where did this show up for you? And if they say not at all, that's not a bad thing. It's just an opportunity for us to get more intentional about what we can convey with a brand, or say, hey, I thought I believed in that, but maybe it's not really at the core level.
I think that's a really interesting point. And we've, like I said, all week we've been asking, we always start with a question. And so it was, what makes you different and why does your work matter and things like that. And as you're saying that, I think this is a hard thing for a lot of us. But maybe, right, to get that feedback that you're talking about, maybe we need to talk with our clients or our past clients more and ask those questions, exactly like you just said. Is that something that architects should do and say, hey, what was your favorite part of this experience, or, even what was lacking in this experience, or I guess in one of the ways that you said it, maybe directing it in a certain direction. Did you feel this coming through in the experience? Do we need to be talking with our past clients more?
I think so. In a perfect world, we're using consistent brand language to describe what we do. We're naming what we do in a thoughtful way. For example, yes, we do brand strategy, but the way we do it is called in a root session. So we've named that, that is our approach. That's our philosophy. So we have opportunities to teach the audience how to use our language and how to describe us. But then it is really good to kind of check back in and see if that's resonating, or ask questions that, give them the room to volunteer that information, so we can tell if the brand is really resonating, and if what we've intended actually ends up, coming to fruition. Yeah. So I think it's healthy always to be in conversation with our clients, but especially when you're done or you're getting to done, is a good time to say, what's one thing we could have done better? What do you value the most? What are you going to keep referring back to? What lessons have you learned through this process that may be related to this project, or might just be related to the experience? Yeah. And it's wonderful when they surprise you. It really is great when they say something that is unexpected.
Sure. So based on that, right, we have some idea, this is what we want. This is the experience that we want to provide, and so on. We're getting feedback. Do our brands evolve over time?
Definitely. So I think the foundation does not evolve that much, but the way that we, from the foundation, the way that, values change. Obviously, we're in an era and a time right now where the whole world, and definitely Western society, there's a lot of shifting values coming out of the pandemic, and people are examining their lives, their work, who they want to partner with, who they want to hire, how they want to work. And so you may have this set of core values or beliefs, but the way that they're being conveyed may change. And then the way that people want to receive them may change. So I think it's about being receptive and open to that feedback. I just listened to a podcast about receiving criticism. So that's sort of front of mind to me, because it is hard. It's very vulnerable to ask those questions. And
it does seem pretty scary.
It is
to go
scary.
back to your client and find out what they didn't like about you. Yes. Seem like you like to avoid that subject generally. But yeah, it would be helpful. But it also seems hard for us to determine and control our brand that way. If we're just, I guess if we're not coming across for whatever we think our brand is, that's good to know. But
Yes, yes, and I wouldn't start with that question, but it's
okay, good. I won't run out and ask them.
Yeah, we want to start with something where that they feel that it's a safe environment to give criticism, because a lot of people hold back if it's not like a relational ask, so to speak.
True. Yeah. So Christian had a question. If we have a post-pandemic brand, is it different from our pre-pandemic brand, and should it be?
Yeah, I think this kind of weaves both of Christian's question and then Jeff, your question, this weaves it together. For me and my business, I've definitely felt a shift from the pre-pandemic, midst of pandemic to now. Again, the root system isn't changed, but how we want to go out into the world and who we want to work with in particular really has. So that calls for some introspection and a critical eye that you take yourself to the brand. And I'm just hearing from a lot of clients that are like, we were trucking in this way, and then maybe they got really busy during the pandemic, or maybe they slowed down, whatever it was, but something feels different now. And I think it's important to pay attention to that and to examine it, and not just kind of muscle forward and wait till things come back. Like, that's the whole idea that things are coming back. I think there's really just a time waster in terms of getting to what's true now. How do we want to work with our clients now? And, what do we need to hear from them? What do we need to know from them? There was this panic during the pandemic of like, oh my gosh, I can't be in person. How can we market? How can we get our story out there? And I think the best thing to do is just have conversations. What's going on in your world? Speak to your clients. What are you fighting? What do you need? And really listen to that.
You mentioned, speaking of Root and River, you mentioned that, and I think it's really good to point out, pre-pandemic, midst of the pandemic, whatever we call now, is this post-pandemic? Who knows at this point, right? But so there is this. There are different. I don't know what the word I even want is, but there are different contexts, definitely, but different levels of what we're experiencing in terms of the pandemic specifically. But I think also our outlook on different things. But you mentioned maybe even rethinking the clients that you want to work with. So thinking about Root and River, is a lot of your brand work and, in-house and brand work, but also the way that you're thinking about brand, is it about the people, organizations, however you define it? Is it about the clients, mainly about the clients that you want to work with?
Yeah, so our principle is around intrinsic branding, and the intent of intrinsic branding is that you're so clear in your brand that your brand attracts and repels. So it attracts the people you do want to work with, but branding is much more about repulsion than it is about attraction, particularly in the formative stage. You want to be so clear that the people, again, who would be a drain and are not a fit, or you don't really want to work with, do bounce before they enter your world. And so for us, we know we love working with defiers. And those are individuals or organizations who want to shift the world for the better through their brand. And they want to shift either their community, their industry, it's often industry, or they have a grand vision, the world. And we work with some nonprofits in that space. But they tend to be quiet leaders, but they're very convicted, and they've actually been around for a while. Most of our clients are more established brands. And I think sometimes people think of branding as just like right off the bat, and a lot of startups, but a lot of the work that we do is with more established brands that have been quietly awesome, and they haven't taken that next step to put a stake in the ground and say, this is who we are. This is what we believe. Here's the change we want to see in our space. And join us. That's the essential kind of call to action of all brands. So yes, we are very intentional and around that, and we look at it all the time. And we measure our success by the people that we speak to, if they kind of are falling pretty neatly into that category. And if they're not, then we need to be sharper with our language. We need to be in different places and saying it to different people. But yeah.
I like the idea that, I think especially for our audience, although we do have, I mentioned this the other day, I used to know off the top of my head about how many people in this community started their own firms in the time that in the 2.5 years or so that we've been doing context and clarity. It's a good handful of people that I guess are in startup mode.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, that means that there's a lot of the community that have been around a while. So they are established as firms and firm owners, et cetera. So it's nice to hear that your niche is, hey, there are these established brands that still need the help that we provide. And I hope that I hope that is encouragement for our audience to say, hey, listen, you may have been in business, what did I say, 9 months or 9 years or something. In the opening today, you may have had your firm for 9 years, but it's not too late. And in fact, there's still work to be done when it comes to this area of branding that you're talking about. As I said in the opening, you're going to be a speaker at the EntreArchitect Community Annual Meeting.
Mm-hmm.
It's coming up November 1st through 3rd in Austin, Texas. What are you going to be talking about there?
So I'm going to go a little bit deeper into these different aspects of brand, like what really makes up a brand, where does a brand come from, and what comprises a brand, and giving some context around what's shifted. And Christian asked, should there be a post-pandemic brand? I don't think it's a question of should, but I do think that there have been these natural forces that have shifted us all. And so that does, of course, play into branding. So I'll be talking about that and giving some insights into how you can begin that process of working on your brand. I mean, we see it as a cultivation, as a very organic process. So even if you've been in business 9 months or 9 years, it's healthy part of running your business to take moments throughout the years or quarters, or make it part of your quarterly review to kind of check in on that brand, particularly if you're trying to attract employees or team members. Because as we know, one of the major things that has shifted even more dramatically than was already on its trajectory was how people want to feel connected to the work that they are doing or being asked to do. And so I think one of the ways that the world has shifted is really around kind of internal branding, or making sure that you feel so secure in that you're conveying that clearly and bringing that every day to work so that it's made real for your team and they feel very invested and engaged in what the brand stands for. So I'll be talking about all of that and giving people a chance to kind of benchmark where they're at a little bit. We're very, we go deep, but we also like to be extremely practical. So hopefully everyone walks away with a few tips on how to get started.
Yeah. I love that. And, this, a community of entrepreneur architects is not all that much different than any community of small business owners, I would say, entrepreneurial business owners. So I think people are in different places in this process. And there are some that probably think that they don't have a brand.
Mm-hmm. Or need a brand.
Or need a brand.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm looking forward to going on that journey during your talk. One of the, you mentioned employees, and there are some in our community that are sole practitioners, maybe a majority in our community that are sole practitioners and want to be, and that's fantastic. There are others that have employees, and one of the biggest things that we've heard lately is the thing that people are struggling with is finding help. sometimes that means employees, sometimes that means consultants, contractors, et cetera. It comes in different forms, right? But I love the fact that on your website, you talk about brands being spiritual experiences. And, you know, everything I'm always hooked in the articles, like on LinkedIn, talking about great resignation, quiet quitting, quiet firing, all of these different dynamics that are in play and have been in play. And it points me back to this idea of combining the idea that a brand is a spiritual experience and what you just said about employees. And again, I'm lumping consultants and others into that same category. But man, where do I really want to work? Where do I really want to spend my time? I teach 2 pro practice classes. One group is an undergrad group that are all going to go off and do their internships starting in January. Some of this will be their very first experience. And in a lot of their homework, those are things that they talk about. I want to work somewhere where I like the work. A lot of them are afraid that I won't be respected. These types of things. And so I love the fact that I could look around and I could go, this is a company, this is a firm, this is an organization. I see what they believe. I believe what they believe. I want to be there. I really want to work there. And I think, if that's what you're doing with brands on one of the layers that you're doing with brands, I think that's incredible work.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. The brand is sort of, to me, it's the juicy center of everything you do. Even if you're a firm of one, it still is, if you're a firm of one, it's the fuel. It's the fire that you want to make sure you're tending to, your set of beliefs that you get to make real, make manifest through your work. So it's important to know them and to have them at your heart center. And even if you're a firm of one, you probably still have people around you supporting you in some way, whether they're partners or assistants or just even, your life partner. And so it's just amazing the difference that it can make when those are really articulated and shared and there's discussion around them. And I think one of the things people get wrong is that, there is all this, there's this chatter around, oh, nobody wants to work, or, you have to be, you've got to have everything down to attract younger people. And I disagree. I think it's about expressing well, who you are, and so that they feel that you're human, you have a spirit that you're trying to convey. And it doesn't mean that it has to be set in stone or iterated to the nth degree, but that it's there and it's guiding you. And I think that's a big part of what people are seeking. And, we say spiritual, but it means of the spirit, that it moves us, that it thrills us, that it comforts us. And brands should move us. My favorite example of this is really Disney and how they have always known who they are, what they believe in. And then they've pulled those beliefs through into immersive experiences that have generated generations of devotees who can spend every vacation there immersed in that experience. And the power of that and how it moves us and how it brings us together and how it creates attachments. That's what we want to look toward.
Yeah, we should all aspire to be brands as powerful as Disney. That's an incredible example.
Yeah, it kind of feeds into Rod's comment here about how many brands evoke both positive and negative reactions from people.
Yeah,
I mean, you get a reaction. So either you love Disney or you don't love Disney.
Yeah. I think that's a great point, and I think it goes back to what you were talking about earlier, Emily, where you're talking about attracting and repelling. That's great. And in my mind, again, looking at it from the strictly from the point of view of the business of architecture, there are so many architects that, and as always, for everybody out there, I raise my hand at the same time here. There are a lot of us that don't like to say no, right? And I've got examples from my time working in firms where we invested lots of time and resources talking to clients that we either didn't know if they were the right fit, in that process of going through, are they the right fit? Should we be doing this? Should we not? Even stories that many of our audience have heard of saying, hey, these are not the right clients, but we're going to take this project because we don't have any other work, that type of thing. But I love the idea of being able to repel those that aren't the right fit. So we don't have to, maybe you don't have to say no.
Exactly.
You don't have to go through this process. Maybe you don't have to tattoo no on your hand.
I said that I was going to do that the other day, but yeah, I mean, I think it's great that you can tell if it's working by how many calls you get from inappropriate people. So that's great. Yeah, I mean, lately I have been getting calls as much, so I don't have to say no as much. But the people who are actually getting in touch with me are people I actually want to work with, who I really literally say, these are the people I want to work with, and they are calling me, and nobody else is really calling. So that's great.
Yeah, it's like the energy test. It's like when you see who's calling, like this is a good way to benchmark your clients. Like if you're like, well, I'm not sure who my ideal client is, here's a little tip. If you get super excited when you see so-and-so is calling, that means they're probably an ideal client for you. So what kind of qualities do they have as a person? Start with the person first, then you can layer on the other factors.
Yeah.
But yeah, and at Root and River, we practice what we preach. So the way that we brand ourselves, we don't really have conversations with clients who would find the idea that brands are spiritual experiences to be offensive, because they've already found another brand consultant to work with, and that's great, because I don't like to say no, but I will. But yeah, it does work. It's we live in a world that has a lot of fast solutions and quick fixes and all that. Intrinsic branding works over time once you get clear on what your message is, and when you can set up really healthy boundaries and powerful language around that to help that repulsion take place before you ever have to say no.
Yeah. Christian has a comment over here in the chat that's probably too long for us to get up on the screen, so maybe I'll try to summarize it. But he was talking about maybe going back to those firms that started during the pandemic. A lot of us were employees before the pandemic, and we didn't have a quote unquote brand, but it was the brand of the firm that we worked for. And then we started our own business because of probably a lot of reasons in the pandemic. So maybe we can cut it at that point and say, what about people that have either recently started their own firms or are getting ready to start their own firms? And I guess the common thread is you're coming out of employment, you're coming out of working for a firm that had a brand, whatever it was, and now you're separating from that. What do you do when you're starting out and or trying to get your footing in the marketplace and you need to shape this brand somehow?
Yes, I think, again, the temptation is to just dive in, start doing work, and then at some point we pop our heads above the surface of the water and go, okay, wait, why am I doing this? And what is the foundation? The more expeditious approach would be to literally schedule yourself a day. And if you can't do a day, do an afternoon. If you can't do an afternoon, grab a couple hours off of your calendar, go somewhere, go to a coffee shop, get out of your usual space, and start some self-inquiry around, what do I believe in? Here, some questions that we like to ask is, what have you always believed to be true that no one ever taught you? What would you commit civil disobedience to defend?
Interesting.
What is something that you are working to instill in your children, the people you mentor, your nieces or nephews, those kind of questions, like really deep, right? So that, and as you begin to answer those, and as you begin to kind of sink into the truth, the foundational truths of who you are, you can layer on top of that, like, okay, now what am I trying to do through this firm? What kind of design am I, how is this showing up? Or how do I wish, if you're new, how do I wish that it would show up? So those are some good places to start. But I really, even if you do that one by one, so you could start with those values questions and move on to like mission. What is my purpose here? What do I want to add to this industry, to this world, to this community that doesn't exist? And what am I here to do that nobody else can do in in the way that I can? And if you find yourself stuck, call a friend, call a buddy, call your life partner, and ask them, what do I do best? What kind of, what is it that makes me unique? And just listen and try to take that in.
Hopefully they have an answer for you.
Yeah. You can ask, why do you love me? But that could go down a whole...
Yeah, don't start that conversation, maybe.
That's too high stakes.
Yeah. Might start developing an interesting brand at that point. How much work do you do on activation of that brand? Because it strikes me that I love that process that you're talking about. Mm-hmm. And if I'm in the coffee shop and I'm going through this and go, yeah, I mean, this is what I believe. I love the civil disobedience question. So this is what I really believe in. This is the hill that I'm willing to die on. But then how do I activate that? How do I find the other people that are going to be on that hill with me? Do you get into that?
Yes.
Maybe that's, we're getting into marketing and business development type activities at this point, perhaps, but where do you go from there?
Yeah. So once we have a solid foundation around those fundamentals, then we transition that. We start to look at the audience. We start to name the audience. We start to position the brand in the world that it's in, and then create narrative all around that. And the first practical iteration of that is website copy comes out of that. And now we're beginning to speak to the audience. And then what we do beyond that is also content. We call it C3. So collaborative content creation. So we, using what we've uncovered in the foundational elements of the brand, we help our clients remain consistent in what they're sharing in the world. And we love long form content. So that's the kind of content we do that can easily go on LinkedIn, a blog, or in an email. So that's our focus, and that's how we help make it real. And we also advise and guide on marketing strategies. But I was just on a call earlier with somebody who had spent 3 years like building up his Twitter following to 10,000 and then hit a wall, got exhausted, didn't want to do anything to do with social anymore. And he's like, the funniest thing happened, my business kept growing. So he's like, I think my client experience is really the most powerful marketing tool that I have. And I totally agree with that. Yeah. So in some cases, just focusing on how we really convey that brand in the client experience is a huge part of, quote unquote, marketing strategy.
Yeah, I think that definitely rings true in this community, because it's even architects that are designing custom homes, that may be the only time that someone, that client, the only time in their life that they hire an architect, there's still such a huge percentage, and I've heard different ranges here, but huge percentage of work that comes from repeat clients and or referrals, where what you're saying absolutely can drive that, right? The experience that I had with Katharine designing my dream house, I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about that experience, not only the house and the, what it's like to live in the house and all that, but also what it was like working with Katharine. And so I think that client experience, to me, that's something that a lot of people sleep on, is that client experience is a real key to the perpetuation and extension of your brand. And we had Jesse Cole, the founder of the Savannah Bananas, the owner of the Savannah Bananas, the yellow tuxedo guy, on Context and Clarity probably a year and a half ago at this point, I guess. But it's amazing to listen to a guy like that and read it. He's got a new book out now, but read his books and see how they're completely rethinking client experience. What is it actually like from the time I go, okay, I want to go to a ball game, to buying the ticket, to going to the stadium, to, every aspect of it. And I think, really thinking about that as an architect and tying it to what you're saying can be incredibly powerful. And I love that fact that, hey, at some point, this thing is going to start pushing forward in some ways on its own.
Absolutely. I think it's the highest ROI. We get the ROI question a fair amount. But of all the strategies, I think the greatest ROI exists in doing brand work, because it will stay true. The majority of it will stay true. It will continue to inform how you're touching people and how you're making them feel. And that's really the secret sauce. I think in American culture in particular, we're so obsessed with the result and the outcome. But the way we make decisions is based in our emotional brain. And, as Maya Angelou said, people remember how you made them feel. Right. And so that's where spirit comes in. And that's where, when we get intentional about that, there is just this extra magical thing that happens. The best brands are aware of that.
Yeah.
I just realized that if you care about how you make people feel, then you will say no to people who you figure you won't make feel too good. Because, I think about my clients, some of them I really want to do better work, or I care more about pleasing them than I do about the ones that I'm not so fond of. So I'm sure the ones I'm not so fond of aren't having, the same kind of experience as when I'm really paying attention. And not that I'm not paying attention. I don't mean to be throwing myself under the bus, but if I work for people I don't want to or don't like, then it's not going to be a good experience for them.
Well, we get trapped in that desire to say yes, sometimes too. And it's when you're talking to somebody and, interviewing or whatever for a project, it's good to be like, oh, you know what? I'm not sure I can serve them the way they want to be served, and have that moment of honesty. And then also, if you know what your values are, it's easier to refer to that, or what your mission is. Like, you've got it in your head and your heart. It's easier to say, you know what, this doesn't align. We're going to say no to this one, even though it's whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
There's a few questions. I think Christian had a question. I see them pop up.
Here, I'll pop it up. I know a logo is not the same as a brand, that one.
Yes. I want to shout out to one of our amazing designers, Jennifer Pace with Pace Creative Design. She designed our logo, gosh, like 6-7 years ago. I get chills with that moment I first saw it, and I was like, oh, that's it. I love it. So you know what? I trusted Jen as a designer, but we sat down and talked through the brand, and we had actually helped her with her languaging of her brand. So she was familiar with our process. So I felt like that was powerful input for her to have. And she had attended a couple of at the time we were doing workshops. So that was the input that we gave her, is that time together and understanding of our process. And that's how she designed the logo. She gave a couple different options, but that was the one that jumped off the page for me.
Nice. Pam's got a good question too up there.
Okay. All right. Do you think a website can express your brand so you don't need additional marketing to bring in your ideal client?
Yes, I do. I do think that. I think websites are mainly now, they're the main tool for getting you past the brand check. So pretty rare in our space, professional services space, creative space, that people are just going to Google, an architect and just go with whoever comes up. What they're going to do is they're going to hear about you. They're going to be referred to you. And then the first thing they're going to do is go conduct the brand test. Go to your website, look at your social footprint. Does this feel like it's like the referral? Is in alignment with the referral I got? And at that point, you either pass or fail. Or you do this third thing where I get this sometimes, like, I read every page of your website. I'm so excited to talk to you. And you have that immediate chemistry. So I think so, yes. But the language and the visual has to be really, really bold. And it's got to be sharp.
Yeah. Well, I think, in that vein, you think about what's going to move people, right? And if I land on your website and it's, okay, that's interesting, that's nice, okay, they're architects, they do fire stations or something. If it's not moving, right, is that actually moving me towards making a selection here? Or is it just like, blah, okay, what else is out there? And I know from experience that it is hard for people to really plant that flag sometimes and really go all in on that. But I think what you're talking about is going all in.
Yes.
Is it? Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, branding is an act of courage. It's saying, this is who I am. This is what I believe. Join me or don't.
Yeah.
Which is very vulnerable. And, it's, but the way that we see it from the other side of the perspective is, if you're going to let the world know who you truly are and feel the weight of that, and then let them decide that, that don't place too much emphasis of your own, worth in that. Just knowing who you are is where the worth and the value lie.
Yeah. Yeah. I know we're right at the top of the hour, but I want to, hopefully I don't regret this because it may take us off on some wild tangent, but Rod has a comment that intrigues me in the reality, in the place that we are right now, in social media and society. Says, in the age of social media, clients are taking the projects and using the building process to become uber mega influencers themselves, and the designers and builders, subs, et cetera, and their products. Which I see that there's one that I pay attention here locally, and I struggle with how I should feel about it because I'm watching it and I'm going, here's a client that's essentially taking credit for the work of a professional and many professionals actually, and they are building their own influencer platform off of somebody else's work. So the question that I have related to this, and I think it's what Rod is getting at, is there a way, let's just say that this one that I'm referring to, they're working with an architect. Is there a way that architect can somehow influence the story that client is telling, or somehow benefit from that? Because in this case, and maybe it's an extreme case, maybe it's not, but in this case, this client is doing their best to benefit off of the work. Is there something that the architect can do, some way to build their brand off of what the client is doing? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And I think it's a great question. And it's a modern reality. So a couple of things come to mind. I think in many cases, the uber mega influencers this is their natural habitat, right? This is the natural way they do everything, whether it's building the dream house or it's like getting fit. They're open dooring it and letting everybody into the process. So they are very open. I think we sometimes, maybe if I'm a Gen Xer, come from a different generation, like, well, how come they didn't, I get like how come they didn't? But if you actually say, hey, I love this. Yeah. We were so excited. Like if you initiate the engagement, either just directly on the platform or say, hey, would you mind, going directly to them saying, hey, would you mind tagging me in that post? Is one way to approach that. They're usually very receptive to that. Oh yeah, like get on there. I'll tag you in the next one, or I'll go back and re-tag you. A lot of times it's just that's their natural state of being. And so they don't necessarily think if they can't find you quickly, maybe they tried, but they couldn't find you. The other thing is to be a little bit more intentional to that and include that look in your contracts and say any media mentions or anytime you want to profile this, please be sure here's our information. Here are the socials that we are active on. And then do the reverse. Like, can you intentionally, even if it's once a quarter or twice a year, showcase a client, and maybe you build that into the language of your contracts. Like, you will be used in our marketing and we will give you love and you will give us love. Like, how can we build upon that beautiful instinct that doesn't come naturally necessarily to everyone, to certain people, and try to respectfully leverage that, to be sure that your work is properly credited.
Yeah. I love that you said it that way as a fellow Gen Xer who often works with digital natives. And what you said totally rang true, because I was thinking about, as we do promotionals for context and clarity, right? We try to tag all of our guests and as we, this week we're going to talk with Emily. There are times, no offense to any past guests out there, but there are times where it's significant work trying to find the right social tag, especially like if you have a common name and I start typing in, and you don't fall into this category, Emily, but I'm going to throw you in here as the example. If I start typing Emily, well, guess how many Emilys start popping up? We've had guests before that have very common, quote unquote, common names, or may have an obscure name or name of their organization. And there are times where I just have to give up, right? My thumbs cannot handle trying to find the right tag to tag them in this post. I'll try to catch it on the second post. I'll try to do some more research, et cetera. But I think the more we can do, first of all, the more we can not get upset. Like you said, that was a fantastic example, not get upset because we're not tagged, but the easier we can make it to be included in that conversation. I think that's just fantastic advice. And again, a lot of us are of a generation, if you're in professional services at this point and you've got some experience, you may not be a digital native.
Yes.
Right? People that we're talking about, it's been a completely different life experience for them. This is in my students all the time, right?
They come from much more of an abundance mindset because their life has been more connected, more immediate, and abundant. And so I think I know for myself, I get stuck in my scarcity mindset sometimes, and I'm like, that's where I'm like, but they should have. But they really, I do think that you can just tap into that abundance mindset and use it to inspire you to kind of take that. And as far as you want it to go, like, it's also not the end of the world that, a post is out there without your, like, you just try to like gauge how much of a big deal. I think in the echo chamber of our lives, our digital lives, like these seems like really big deals, and we need to stay grounded in the fact that probably people even saw the post you're speaking of.
That's an excellent point. I know we've made it past the top of the hour.
We have, but I was wondering if this is your quote. I mean, Christian put it up there, but it's not from your website.
Yes, it is. Yes,
sounds like
sharp language that we're talking about.
Very sharp. You mean the half?
Yes.
Yes, that would be.
We had one client, this was years ago, one client that was very, they were very devout. And so they were worried that we used the word ass on our website. And we had to just say, Sorry, we may even use it in conversation.
It could come up in a conversation.
Well,
ass isn't that the biblical word for a donkey anyway? I mean, don't they usually?
Don't we have a
word's
donkey?
actually in the Bible, I think, but I'm no expert.
You're right.
Yeah. In case you're just listening in, I'm gonna read the quote. It says, "To brand from the heart, you need a heart, and you need to commit. Branding is not something you do half-assed." That's a quote from the Root and River website. So, just in case you're not looking at the screen, right
Sorry
now.
about that.
Similar to a quote by Ron Swanson from Parks and Rec. Don't do two things half-assed, do one thing full-assed.
Nice.
Oh, great words.
Those are your marching orders for today. That's a great way to bring it all the way around here. I know we're past the top of the hour anyway, so that's a good way to pull it together, I think. Emily, thank you very much for this conversation, first of all. Second of all, we look forward to hearing you speak and meeting you in person in a little less than 3 weeks now in Austin, Texas at the EntreArchitect Community Annual Meeting. We're really looking forward to having you as one of our speakers there. For those of you that are listening right now or watching right now going, oh, what's that all about? Well, November 1st through 3rd in Austin, Texas, we have the first ever live conference dedicated just to you, the small firm entrepreneur architect. I love the fact that this conference is a single track conference, which means that you will not have to make a choice. Do I want to go listen to Emily speak or somebody else or some other activity right now? We're all going to have the ability to immerse ourselves in all of the speakers and all of the activities of the moment, and you'll get to immerse yourself in listening and learning from and taking action from what Emily has to say while she's speaking. So go to smallfirmconference.com to learn about all the speakers, to learn about the venue, to learn about the schedule, and to register and join us in Austin, Texas in about 3 weeks. So that's the commercial. Again, Emily, thank you for this conversation. Thank you, Katharine, for, again, co-hosting this with me. And to all of you out there that are listening, either live or in the future, thanks. Thanks for making context and clarity a thing, because if it weren't for you, we wouldn't be having this conversation with Emily right now. So thanks for making this a thing. Thanks for allowing us the opportunity to talk about intrinsic brands, spiritual brands, brands from the heart, all of those things that Emily talks about and she works on in real life every day. So thanks, everybody, for that. In the meantime, please take care of yourself. Be well, stay safe, keep those around you safe and well. Find some time to breathe and relax, a way to rejuvenate, because we do this every day. Every weekday, we do context and clarity. You got to pace yourself. Thanks for going along this journey with us, and we will see you actually next week. I forgot to pull this up. Next week, our guest will be, as I scroll, will be Carl Sergio. We're going to talk about mentoring next week. Mentorship, mentoring, mentors. So join us for this. This is another one of those topics that's been asked for a long time. So all week next week, we'll talk about mentorship. I will post Saturday morning about that. You tell me what you want to talk about next week. So until then, again, thanks. I appreciate you, all of you. And we'll see you next week. Thanks, everybody.